We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. During roll call, please.
Mr. Cordray?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Rossi?
Here. All right, let's stand for pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First off, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We're going to kind of do this a little bit different than our typical trustee meetings. I want to get an opportunity. I think with the agendas were on the back of the table, but we haven't had a chance to see it. We're going to have probably a 5-minute or so presentation from each department tonight, and then following each presentation, we're going to do like a 10-minute Q&A. It'll be a little bit more, not quite as formal as a typical trustee meeting. We're not going to ask everybody to come up to the podium. We'll try and get you a mic and just ask that you ask your question, then we'll try and address them as they come in. And then after the 10-minute Q&A during each department presentation, then we'll stop that and move on to the next presentation this evening. And then with that also, just before we start, I know this is kind of geared towards our neighborhoods or subdivisions, so I would ask if you wouldn't mind, if you're here representing a subdivision tonight, if you sit on one of your HOA boards or whatnot, if you wouldn't mind just standing for just a moment and then just have everybody go around and introduce themselves. That way you guys can kind of know who's here. And us as well.
Cheryl Freeman, Village on the Green.
Shirley Miller, Village on the Green.
Jim Miller, Village on the Green, no relationship.
Susan Burns, Acorn Trail, Bishop Bend.
Margie Hominy, Regency Park.
Mark Rogers, Regency Park. Adam Morgan, 21 Oaks.
Robin Thompson, 21 Oaks.
John Elliott, 21 Oaks.
Scott Moreland, 21 Oaks.
Tom Worrell, Dina.
Charles Williams, reserves at Indian Lake.
Chad Wilkerning, Reserve, Indian Lakes.
Tim Ray, Reserves at Indian Lake.
Susan McQuiggan, Reserve at Indian Lake.
Fred Copley, Indian Lake. Frank Farr, Indian Lake.
Andy Glass, Michael's Farm.
Thank you. Once again, welcome. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. At this time, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open it up with a presentation from our police department.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a gorgeous Tuesday evening. Spend time in here with us. We appreciate that. Thanks for that. It's going to be very, very brief. Just an overview on the police department. Mostly all familiar or unfamiliar faces than what we usually see at our trustees meetings. That's really awesome. My name's Scott Hughes. I've been the police chief here since 2016. I came from, spent most of my career down in Hamilton County with the different townships. Worked at Shortston up just outside of Dayton as an assistant chief. However, I've lived here in Hamilton Township since 2003. So very vested in the community and its future and its growth, being a resident here for as long as I have. I also think that's a nice little added bonus to have an actual direct connection here. So I enjoy it here. Our motto is very simple: guardian heart, warrior spirit. You know, every department has a motto, has a vision, has a mission statement on what they want. I like to keep ours very simple. And basically what that means is the guardian heart is doing what's right, not wrong, good, not bad. And it's also about treating people the way you want to be treated with respect to when you're answering a call for service, when you're taking a report, when you're dealing with members of the public. Warrior spirit is more, while you're doing those tasks, make sure you're safe. Make sure you're protecting yourself, make sure you're protecting the residents, and that you get home to your families as well. So very short, very sweet, but I think it's very powerful. Our organizational structure is very slim. Obviously you have myself as the chief. We have 4 sergeants. 3 of those sergeants are assigned to road patrol. The other sergeant is more of an administrative sergeant role, where he's also a detective. We have 13 police officers. 2 of those police officers are actually assigned to our school, which I'll introduce those gentlemen to you here in just a second. And then we have 1 civilian police clerk who works primarily Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4. She does all the behind the scenes. She keeps the place running, keeps the wheels turning, all that good stuff. The township is divided up into 4 beats. The upper half up here, beat 1, beat 2. This would be basically Foster Mainville Road North. So you got South Lebanon up here. You got Morrow down here. You got the river coming around this direction, Kings Mills. And then beat 3 and beat 4, we call those the south beats. Down here would be Loveland. Over here would be Kazadale. This is Goshen down in this area. So you kind of can acquaint to the beat structure. The overwhelming majority of our calls for service happen in the north. That's also where the biggest chunk of residential and commercial development is. So obviously where you've got more folks, you're going to have obviously an increase in calls for service. So most of what we do is up here in the northern half of the township. While we're out there making our rounds and doing what it is that we do, I promote a philosophy of community policing. I will show you our social media pages here in just a second, but if you follow us on any of the social media pages, you know how much we're out there in the community. I think it's important in a community like this, nearly 30,000 residents, primarily a bedroom community. What this community wants from us, the police department, is engaging the community. So as time allows, we definitely like to do that. We've got a great relationship with the majority of our HOAs. Whenever we stop and see kids playing, we like to get out for softballs and baseballs. And some of it you don't see, but we don't post everything, but we try to do some of the highlights. So we also try to do a lot of stuff in the community. One of the biggest things we do are our coffee with the cops. You'll see those starting up again when the weather starts to get a little bit cooler. However, I did want to showcase, we're actually going to do cones with the cop, which is going to be on June 21st at the UDF. UDF was gracious enough to donate, it's either 100 2-scoop cones or it's 200 1-scoop cones. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but we're going to have a ton of ice cream cones that UDF has donated, so we're going to encourage everybody, it's in the afternoon, to bring the kids out. Most of the kids are out of school by then, so hopefully they're hanging out, babysitters or whatnot. We did it last year over here at Scoops, so now we're going to do it over at UDF in a couple of weeks. That'll be fun. I mentioned our school resource officers. Shane Brandenburg has probably he's been around the schools as long as I can remember. So he's been in the schools so long that he was telling me there's kids that when you started, they were in grade school, and now they're in college, or now they're back as teachers. So he's been doing it for a long time, which is really cool to have that connection. And so if you don't know Shane, he's in the middle picture there. This is Shane here. And then Joe Smith, he actually joined our agency a little over a year and a half ago. He came to us from Green Township, which is down on the west side of Cincinnati. And I've been working since I got here in 2016 to add a second school resource officer. I mean, obviously, our school district is just growing so fast, and we've got buildings spread out. On the Little Miami High School and Junior High School campus, they've got more folks on that campus than some communities have residents. So it's like a little city down there with respect to population numbers. So we finally were able to work out a really good deal with the school district I think was fair. So we added Joe Smith, and he's absolutely, again, doing a great job. Again, if you follow us on social media, you'll see that. Most of these numbers up here are 2018 numbers, but just to kind of show you where we are with regards to other communities in Warren County. The top is Mason. If I get this, there it is. The top's Mason. Sorry. The departments on the left. Police department budgets, again, some of these are 2018 numbers. In the second column, number of police officers. This is not total staff. This is police officers. How many square miles they're covering is in this fourth column. And then population numbers, again, in the last column. So you can kind of see, other than square miles, we are at the bottom across the board with other comparable communities in Warren County. If you take Mason out of the equation, look at Clear Creek Township, a comparable township, you can see their numbers there, the third one down. Deerfield Township, third from the bottom, their contract with the Sheriff's Office. You can see their numbers there. So I always like to show folks where we are in the grand scheme of things when you compare us to other communities just in our county. We got 18 total personnel. We're covering 35 square miles. It'll be interesting to see what this next census does, to see if it puts us over 30,000, if we're going to hover around the 29.5. So we'll see what happens there. One of the things that we brought back just this year, which I'm very, very proud of, it's been over a decade since we did one here, and that was our Citizens Police Academy. It was an 8-week program. We met one night a week for about 3 hours a night. I think some of the classes went closer to 4, and some of them I think they wanted to go a couple of days. They had so much fun. We showed them everything from how to take fingerprints, the SWAT team, how to investigate a crash, proper way to make traffic stops. We brought in some local canines to do canine demonstrations. SWAT team, Major Aerosmith came down, talked about the county-wide drug task force. It was really eye-opening for folks to see just what all goes on in the township and what all it takes just to be a police officer. So it kind of opened their eyes to that. And I'm also proud to report that as a result of that, we formed, or in the process of forming, our very first ever Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association. Again, this is something we did down where I used to work, and it was a very successful program in that it allowed folks who spend 8, 10, or 12 weeks with us. I don't want it to be where, hey, you graduate, thanks for your time. I want to be able to come back and stay involved and give back to the township and the police department and still kind of stay around for those that want to. So we started the paperwork to become a 501c3, so we're going to be getting that going. And this is the graduating class, and I think the majority of the graduating class is eager to become members of the Alumni Association. So we've done some of that preliminary work with filing the paperwork, or getting the paperwork filed with the state. So we're excited about that. And I think this is my last slide, and then I'll take some questions. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We've been doing a lot of our road closure announcements and things on Twitter. Twitter's becoming a little more popular. It's quicker to do breaking news on Twitter than it is Facebook. But having said that, we're out there. You can find us and stay in touch with us. We'd love to have you follow us. So I think that's my last slide. Oh, I got a question mark. That's right, for questions. So does anybody have any questions of me that maybe I can answer? Yes, sir.
What determines your staff count? Road miles, population?
Meeting minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to give you the microphone. State your name, last 4 of your social, your date of birth. No, I'm just kidding.
No, what determines your staff count? Is it road miles, population count? What is it?
Does he have to say his name?
Tony Weist.
I don't want to get in trouble.
It's an open meeting. You protocol.
Name and address.
Tony Weist, 6655 Milkweed Court, Landings in Willow Pond.
Thank you, sir. So what determines our staffing? So that's an interesting question. The FBI has done studies, and they have what I would call a standard. The majority of police departments, this is based on the FBI statistics, which you can, if you just Google how do you staff a police department, you'll get the Bureau of Justice Assistance report. For a community our size in the Midwest, 1.5 police officers for every 1,000 residents is what the FBI suggests. Now, I take that a step further, and I actually do what's called a performance-based allocation research, and we look at calls for service, time of day officers are working, and what they're actually doing during that time, and then we compile a formula based off of that. And what that formula suggests is for our shifts, our officers work 12-hour shifts, we should have a minimum of 4 people on patrol on each shift. Right now, we're averaging 2 officers per shift. So you've got, you have 2 police officers covering that 36 square miles. If you go by the FBI statistics of 1.5 for every 1,000 for 30,000 residents, we're about 60 to 66% below what they suggest.
Yeah, because I noticed Clear Creek Township staff was higher than ours here. So.
That's correct. And again, some of this is 2018 information. Clear Creek Township actually, I believe Clear Creek's actually now 25. Don't hold me to that. But yes, we are certainly well below. Yet we've got more population, nearly double. They do have us on square miles, but we've got 15,000 more residents, approximately. But great question, great question. Anything else for me?
Barbara G. Harmony, 490 Hennepin Drive, Regency Park. Are you planning to do the Citizens Academy soon or again?
We are. In fact, I don't know if we're going to do it in the fall or if we're going to wait again and do it in January. We felt like January through April was a good time frame because it was cold out. There wasn't many obligations with fall sports and things like that. But yes. And when that happens, we will post that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Jim Miller, 1045 Wood Duck Court. In Village on the Green, I had today 4 people, 2 people for, 2 people against. You have your speed limit check sign coming into our neighborhood. What's the criteria for that? Do you have a schedule for that, or is that based on complaints? Or because 2 people said great, thank you, and 2 people said what are you doing?
It depends, is the short answer.
Okay.
Some of it's complaint driven. Some of it would be based off of have we seen an increase in crashes. You'll see a lot of times we'll park the police car with nobody sitting in it on like 22 and 3 going down towards Old 3C Highway. It's because the speed limit changes and we get complaints about people can't turn out, so we park the police car there to slow people down. But if you request it, like I've got a request right now to go over on Caldwell Drive to put it, we'll do that too. So it just depends.
Okay.
Yes. Is it in a bad spot or they just did? Okay.
No,
Because we talked.
Yeah,
we talked. So
I was just curious if it's a rotating schedule, because 2 people have said thank you, and 2 people said what's that doing there?
Yeah, the only one, so Regency Park, yes, Regency Park several years ago, their HOA actually asked to buy their own speed sign to use in Regency Park primarily. And we have an agreement with Regency Park that we leave that one primarily in Regency Park, unless we have something we need to get speed counts on, but yeah. All right, seeing no,
Robin Thompson, 844 Grand Oaks Drive. I was just wondering, can we get somebody, I know you guys are short-staffed and everything else, but sitting at 22 and 3 and 48, because it's constantly somebody making left-hand turns when we're trying to make our right on green, and I've been almost hit 3 times this week, and it's only Tuesday.
Yes, so 22 and 48 is an interesting animal. That intersection is so large that it's difficult because folks get out in that intersection, they get past that stop bar, and then they have to clear the turn. The short answer is yes. The bigger answer is we believe there's some design issues there. I know one thing we're still working on, and that, of course, is controlled by ODOT, is I would like to see a dedicated red left turn arrow. In other words, you get the green arrow left, the yellow arrow left, and then red arrow left, and then you can't turn anymore. Unfortunately, what happens is folks kind of creep out there and they get on their side of the bar, and you could get 3-4 cars deep. And then the lights turn, and then you got all these folks, they're trying to make that. It's tough.
Like this morning, I was in the right hand, I was coming down 48 this way, making my right hander. He was on the other side by the church, and he almost hit me because he didn't even slow down. He just, and he could obviously see me.
Yeah, it's there's for the longest time when you came westbound on 22 to go north on 48, I believe there's a yield sign.
Yeah, no yield signs.
Yeah, the yield signs are gone now, but I feel like people still unfortunately kind of treat it as a yield sign. And then if you're turning to go north on 48 from eastbound, and you've got the arrow, you've actually got the right of way. But if someone's started to turn right, you've seen people stop, and I know. I'll tell them again to try to sit down there. It's just so it's difficult.
You can really affect your budget just sitting there.
Great point. I had that slide up there. I took it off. But did you know?
Double the price of the ticket and sit there. You would make.
Did you know that townships do not generate substantial amount of money on traffic citations? We don't have our own mayor's court. And this is all in all seriousness. For example, Mainville next door, they have their own police department. They also have their own courts. So if you get a ticket inside Mainville, that money would go, most of the money goes to the village, or most of our money goes to the county, to the state. We get very little. I don't have the exact figure, but we get very little from traffic tickets, which most people don't know that. So, yeah. So.
All right, we got time for one more question for Chief Hughes before we move on.
Thank you all again for your time, and thanks for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you.
Brian Reese, Fire Chief with Hamilton Township, and I got down here in 2015. For those of you who don't know, been around here long enough, I think you've probably seen my face, maybe, out and about. And we did have a really cool motto. I came up with something really cool, but I let it slip out. Next thing I know, it's on the police letterhead. So, something different. No, just kidding. Those guys live that, and they're awesome. I appreciate that. What we came up with were core values. So about 18 months ago, I worked with my officers and we came up with core values. So when I'm not there, whatever decision they may have to make that we don't have a policy or an exact thing, they filter it through this. And what we came up with, and there's a description for each one of those, so that as long as they're making decisions that meet our core values, we believe that's what you expect from us, and we're meeting what you expect from us. And we're doing the mission of the fire department with those core values. So we do fire and medical. We also do hazardous materials mitigation when necessary. But a lot of things that you may not know we do, or maybe you do, as with education and training out to the public, we do first aid and CPR. So we have instructors that you can come to the firehouse, or we can come to you, church, HOA building, clubhouse, schools, and we can do classes for you there. Captain Goodpaster is great heading this up, and he does a lot of teaching for us, but he has some instructors that work for him also, and they get out to do this. They try to do groups of about 10 for one instructor, but you get basic first aid, basic CPR, and it's at no charge if you don't need a card. A lot of times medical personnel will need a CPR card or something like that, and we do have to charge for that because that's an expense for us. But if you just want to learn how to do it without necessarily having a certificate, we provide those for free. We also started this year doing a Stop the Bleed course, which came out of the mass casualty incidences where they were finding that a lot of people just bled to death before treatment got to them. So we're trying to get that information out to the public as well, how to stop the bleed, and very likely save a life. And we actually have a local story where Sergeant Walt was able to hop out of his car, apply a tourniquet to an auto accident victim to the leg, and actually save the man's life by stopping some severe bleeding. Another probably unknown thing is we also put on fire extinguisher classes. So not everybody has ever had an opportunity to use a fire extinguisher. Maybe you've seen them hanging in their houses or at work or whatever. But we'll come out and we also go through some of the steps on, you know, how best to use one, how to protect yourself, and what types of extinguishers that you can possibly buy. And a lot of times we get leftover fire extinguishers turned into us, which allows us to bring those out and use them up and those type of things. So, and actually allow you to use real fire extinguishers. Smoke detectors. We get a lot of calls and we do come out, and if you have smoke detectors that need hung or replaced, we will assist with that. We want to make sure that everyone has a healthy smoke detector in their house. We'll help change batteries if you need us to. We do even keep a stock of smoke detectors in case a household doesn't have one. I usually try to tell my people, if you're out on like a medical call that's not too serious or whatever, just check and make sure, or you know, any other reason why you might be in someone's house, and just check and make sure that they have working smoke detectors. That's what saves lives, right there. Station tours and community involvement. So we love having the kids come into the firehouse and giving them tours, and a lot of times we show them the fire trucks and all that, and we give them some superficial information because, you know, we kind of focus on the age group of the audience. But if you ever have any particular questions, or would like a more in-depth information on the tools and things that we do at the firehouse, you're more than welcome to stop in. If you know of anyone who might be interested in the fire service or medical service, we can do ride-alongs as well. We come out for birthday parties. We cardboard boat regatta. We're always trying to be involved with the community and be out where you are, and be a representative for you. So we have our new fire station 76 going in next door. We've got a young man with a drone who's going to be doing some videotaping for me. So a couple of good things that have happened over the last couple of weeks. We got the front culvert in, so that's our main entrance. That was a big deal. They say they're on time. Things are going well. I don't know if probably folks from Regency probably noticed last Saturday, or I think it was last Saturday, there were 7 trucks of lime delivered. The ground was very wet because of all the rain, so we had to have the property treated with lime in order to be able to compact the dirt and make a good base for the foundation. They advise us, we meet with them every other Tuesday. They advise us we're on time and things are going well.
They always do.
Our organizational chart. Obviously, I'm at the head of the department. I have a fire inspector who is very busy right now with a lot of new builds and Hopkins Commons going in and some other things. He reviews plans. He goes out and makes sure things are going in correctly. Works closely with Warren County at doing the pre-build inspections and pre-occupy inspections. But he also goes around and does our yearly inspections of all the businesses as well. We have people who have daycares in their home or adoption, and they have to do like have their house inspected prior to adoption, so we go out and do those. And he also, it's kind of a sharing thing, he also does zoning inspection for the administration as well. So he stays pretty busy. I have an EMS supervisor. That's a new position I just created. So the medical side of things is about 60–65% of what we do right now. And it has potential of being greater. So I created the EMS supervisor who works a 40-hour week. That way he can work across all shifts and see everybody. And he does a lot with QA. He does a lot of training. He is an EMS, state certified EMS instructor. So his time that he spends with the guys counts towards, we have to renew our certification every 3 years. So the time he spends training us goes towards that certification. And then on each shift, we have 3 shifts that work 24 on and 48 off. I have a shift captain who runs the whole, he's over both stations. I have a lieutenant who works down at Station 77 typically, down on 22, or else if the captain is off on vacation or some other reason that he fills in for him as the shift supervisor. I have an additional 11 firefighters full-time that work underneath the captains and lieutenants, and then I try to maintain about 4 part-time people on each shift, but that's been a struggle. The part-time staffing is very difficult to maintain. So just real quick, our run volumes, just because it's been fairly significant. So the actual runs that we write reports on, we've increased just slightly over 300 in the 4 years that I've been here. And so the actual calls for service from the county has actually has a higher number than that, but we don't do reports on all of it. This is just what we do at the firehouse and write reports on. So it's climbing, and so far this year, the first 5 months of this year, we're actually 50 runs over last year already. So that's going to continue to climb. And I'm sorry about the small numbers on this. So when gathering statistics, it's very difficult to get a comparison because everybody sets up and operates differently. But this pretty much shows that Hamilton Township falls right into departments of our size. We're very similar. Our staffing does get down to 6, where the others maintain 7. I try to get to 7 as often as possible or greater. And as far as full-time personnel, we have 20. Where the I keep hitting that button. We have 20 full-time personnel in various positions. Goshen Township has 18. Pierce Township in Claremont County, which is how far out I went to get a department that's comparable, has 18 as well. And then Deerfield I threw in there. They're much bigger than we are, much busier than we are. They have 42 full-time personnel. They have 3 stations. All the rest of us are operating on 2 stations. But one thing is quite a bit different there is that the 2 departments, Goshen Township and Pierce Township, we have similar departments, are serving 13 and 16,000 residents, where we're 29 and growing. So beyond that, do you have questions for me?
Not to say necessarily you're building a firehouse.
Thank you, Mark.
Jim Miller, 1045 Wood Court. A couple of questions. First of all, that 29,000 you guys are using, where's that number? How old is that?
Actually, it's relatively new. It's from estimates of builds that we have. There is a source out there, the Ohio, I think the Ohio Bureau of Statistics, based off of our 2010 census and then estimates each year. They said July of 2018 we were at 26.4 something. But the 29,000 is based off of building that we know that's happening in the township.
The other question I have is, there's classes and stuff you offer?
Yes.
Do you have a minimum requirement for people that you want to see in those? And
Since Captain Goodpaster is working 40 hours, he's able to be more flexible. So he has done 1 person. So if you have a small group, he would be more than accommodating for that.
Okay. And how far ahead do you schedule those?
Just call and we can work out a date. I mean, it doesn't have to, he's got a lot of flexibility as far as doing that. So when his schedule would be open.
Thank you.
Mark Souza, 1470 Shawnee Run.
I think in general in society, we hear more in the news and the media about crime trends and drug trends and think more police. But in the fire world, what are the biggest challenges the fire department faces today?
Our biggest challenges? So staffing is a big one right now, statewide. Departments are struggling to fill holes as people retire or move on or whatever. So staffing is a big one. Are you talking about like particular emergencies or?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, trends and types of calls or.
So staffing and just a rising. So obviously we don't have the opioid problems here that others do. I mean, we do get our share, but it's not a significant amount. So we have that. And then what we also have coming to this area with Hopkins Commons and Adobe.
55 Abode.
Yeah, Abode, thank you. 55 Abode, which are the
senior living.
Yeah, senior living. I was trying to think of the generation. Baby boomers, who are aging and good, and I'm one, so I
Memory goes first.
Yes, thank you. So as they're rising in age and going into 55 and older communities, those types of things, I see those adding pressure to our services that we provide. Yes, ma'am.
Susan Burns, Acorn Trail, Bishop Bend. Do you offer CPR for healthcare workers, or
We do.
just basic?
We do. No, we provide healthcare provider CPR as well, but you will probably need a card.
Right.
So I think it's $11 a card, I think.
It used to be $10, didn't it?
Well,
Right.
used to be able to get free from American Heart Association. I used to be able to go up to American Heart Association and get free cards, but now they found out they can make money off of it.
Right,
So
absolutely.
they're $11 a
Okay,
piece.
so you do offer it, thank you.
Yes. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Kenny Hickey. I'm the Public Works Director. Been with Hamilton Township for 19 years. Been with the Road Department for 15 years. I serve as a volunteer firefighter for the fire department. That's where I started off, and I still do that duties as well. Kind of want to give a history of my background. I actually grew up and raised in Hamilton Township. Been here my whole life. Actually grew up right down the street from Teshuar Park, is where I grew up, and I live over on Nunner, so don't kill me. Don't put any death threats on my roads and stuff for the road. I'm sorry. Anyways, just want to kind of get into it. far as our motto, I didn't put it up on here. We try to serve the finance community the best we can with what we've got, and that's what our motto is on ours. So I just want to kind of break into it here. One thing that you guys graciously done last year is you actually passed a road levy for us, because after this year we was out of money. We get fundings through our local fundings through the state, which the state has been taking more and more every year, so we've lost it. So with your guys' help on getting the road levies, this is something that I can actually produce, and I'm going to actually produce every year on the roads that we've actually are going to be resurfacing this year. We also use it for infrastructure. It is not used for any employees. It's actually used for road use, for infrastructure use only. And that's one thing I gave my word on, and I'll stick to that. So what we've done this year is we actually done more road resurfacing. I do have infrastructure next year we got to work on, but I got close to 8 miles of road, which we've actually been doing about 2 miles of road a year, and that's not enough. We need to be at least 6 or more every year to just keep up. You know, we have 58 subdivisions, 98 lane miles in the township. That's a lot of area to cover. So one thing, just a quick list of what we've done. We're going to actually be resurfacing Slotman Road, Hatswank Road, Harrison Road, Stevens Road, Cabernet Court, Chardonnay Drive, Chancellor Lane, Village on the Green Parkway, and that's the main entrance going all the way back, and the roundabouts all the way back. Maple Grove, Linden Creek, Stapleford Manor, Lebanon Road, Lakewood Farms, and Hampton Glen. So what I try to do is with this, I try to kind of split up our main roads and our subdivisions and try to work that where it's kind of half and half. I think I got a little more on subdivision this time, but there's a lot to cover. So just want to let you guys know, $844,872.90 is what went towards road resurfacing. It's not cheap to resurface roads, and that's why we try to prevent it by doing repairs, infrastructure. That's why we're working on that, to try to help with the road so we don't have to resurface it as long, and actually to save the tax dollar money as well for it. How does the township accept roadways? When a builder would like to do a development, what he does is he actually goes to the county, and he asks the county, and he lets them know what he wants to build. Once that is complete, they have to go through certain regulations and all that. I kind of condense this quick because we only got 5 minutes, so I didn't want to go whole length. But once he makes that request and he finishes the subdivision, what happens is myself and the inspector from Warren County walks through the subdivision, checks the sidewalks, checks the roadways, checks for signage, checks for the fire hydrants, make sure they're 18 inches from the center of the hydrant cap on down, because if it isn't, I've had areas where they've actually put the dirt right up to the hydrant itself, up to the steamer cap, and they wouldn't be able to hook to it. So that's one thing we actually do when we check out the subdivisions as well. Upon the completion of that, then that's when the subdivision will be accepted over to Hamilton Township. We actually do a letter. I'll actually write a letter to the county saying we accept this subdivision, and that's when it does get turned into Hamilton Township. But during the whole process, it is under Warren County. It does not come under Hamilton Township until we accept that subdivision. So if you guys see areas that don't have the no parking fire lane signs and they're just being built, that's the reason why, because it's not required until it's all finished through and we accept that. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there so everybody knows as well. How do you know what is a township road and what isn't? The responsibility for maintaining public roadways in Hamilton Township is charged to 3 different agencies. We actually have Hamilton Township, Warren County, and State of Ohio, ODOT. So 22 and 3 and 48 is a state road. We do not maintain that. We also have county roads throughout the area: Kazadale, Murdoch, Kazadale, Zora Road, those such that are out there that are not maintained by Hamilton Township. So as a township, we're not incorporated like a city and a village is. Cities and village maintains their own stuff as an incorporation. So when the township does that, we just maintain the township roads only. So one thing that we did actually throughout the last couple of years, I've actually updated all of our the main roads. Now this isn't the subdivision. Pretty much all the subdivisions except for a couple reserves, Dina, Miami Bluffs, that type of stuff that is private. All the other subdivisions are Hamilton Township. So what we did is actually on the main roads itself, we put the road signs with the township logo. So if you see a road that actually has a township logo on it, that's a Hamilton Township road that we maintain and upkeep it ourselves. So I kind of want to put that factoid out there as well. It kind of helps out not only for the residents, it also helps out for emergency services. If we have a tree down, they can actually call and have us come out and cut it and know that it's a township road and not a county. Other duties that performed by the Public Works Department, we are actually getting ready to do a road assessment. Next year I'm going to be having a road assessment to go through and look at all the culvert pipes throughout the township, roadway. What we do every year, we rate our roads, and from 1 to 10, 10 being the newest or the best, down to 1 being the worst. We go through every subdivision. I mean, every road, every subdivision, we walk it, we check it out. Myself and my road supervisor does it. It takes about 2.5, 3 weeks to do it. But that way we have a rating on that. And what I'm doing is about every 15 years, I'm having an engineer come in and compare it to what we rated it. So that way we know we're somewhat on base with what an engineer would think and what they know, being that that's their experience. We don't have an engineering department here. We rely on Warren County to do that. So I kind of want to put a comparison up to that, and also put in an inventory of all of our culvert pipes, and that is something that's never been done, guardrail, throughout the township. So I want to get back into our basis and getting that back in there so we know what we have to do every year and have a better analysis on that. Another thing we do, we actually maintain the parks too. We have a parks department. It's seasonal help. We have 2 of them, and then our guys maintain the rest of it. We have 600 acres that we maintain that. We also do cemeteries as well. We perform the burials and do the general upkeep and maintenance of the cemeteries. We do contract the mowing out. It's just something we can't do. We got 6 guys that maintain the roadways, cemeteries, parks, and just not enough guys to take care of everything. So we do have to contract other things out as well. And that's all I've got. Anybody has any questions for the maintenance side?
I'm Tim McMahon, 8129 Acorn Trail. There's yellow tape on the park on 22 and 3. I'm not sure the name of the park, on the child's play area. The yellow tape's been around that?
I think that's in Landon Park you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's actually covered by Deerfield Township. That's not Hamilton Township.
Do you have any idea why that's not open to the children, even though it's not yours?
I can find out. That's actually handled through Warren County Park District. I know they just installed all that, so they may be waiting for that stuff to set and settle before they let them on there. That's a lot of times what they do with that.
My grandchildren were interested.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
No problem.
Jim Miller, 1045 Wood Duck Court. That signage with your logo and stuff on it, do you provide those signs?
We actually do provide those signs and upkeep it, as long as it's not on, like in Village on the Green, you guys have your specialty signs.
Right.
We do not put them on that. We will provide them for you as they go bad. The main thing is we had to actually start doing the main roads. Those things are about $150 a piece, so they get up there in cost. So
as our signs go bad,
we'll be
we come to
updating
you
them.
instead of putting.
Yes.
Good. Ooh, cool.
Yes. That's another thing that actually helps with the road levy. We're putting money towards that as well to help with signage around here because that's expensive.
You must be the treasurer of HOA.
Hi, I'm Susan Burns. I'm Acorn Trail, Bishop Bend. And my questions are about your resolution 181107C about the changes to the cemetery in the additional cemetery of your rules for headstones.
Okay.
So my question about them is, do you know what brought about this? I mean, when did that start? And when did you discuss it? Why did it start? Did you have complaints? Did you have, why? We were told that would always be flat stones.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of defer that to my administrator to talk about that as well. We maintain that we do have a cemetery sexton that done it, and I'll let him kind of explain in detail why everything, the steps that happen with that. If you just give us, if we can finish the question here, and then I'll have him come through with that. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
Hi, Tim Ray, 205 Coyote. On being on the HOA board, I get a few things come down the pike from residents asking about the street signs and the stop signs that are kind of, getting kind of where they probably need to be changed.
Okay.
Is there a process for that, or?
There is. So what you want to do is, if you guys think that you have signs that are fading, The biggest thing to put out there, and we do have it on our website, if it does have any special bracketry or anything like that, that has to be upkept and maintained by you guys. We'll provide the sign, but you guys would have to have it installed, and but I don't believe you guys have that back in your section. So what you want to do, just I'll give you a card, and just email me what ones you think are out there that are fading or in that area, and what I'll do is I'll assess that, and then we'll let you know what we're working on that. But yes, we do that. I do have a sign inventory. It's on my on our web that we actually maintain it, upkeep it as years go. I make sure I send that, and so we actually do have other ways of taking care of that. But yeah, just send me an email and we'll take care of that.
And I just want to say, it's a great reminder, all of our cards are right there in the back this evening, so if you need any of our contact information, anybody up here, one of our department heads, feel free to grab a business card on your way out this evening.
Any other questions? All right, I'll let him.
Can I finish my questions and then you can answer all of them at once?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. These are my neighbors from Bishop Bend. There's about 6 or 8 houses back there that back up to the cemetery and where we would be considered adjacent properties. Is there a rule or is there something that we should have been notified of this? And then my other question is, was this started by the residents of Hamilton Township or was this generated by some sort of business like a monument company or a funeral home? And is there anything that Hamilton Township can do for us who now have to face headstones? Those are my questions.
I got them. Thank you, and thank you for coming out and asking. This is the perfect platform to do that. So the first question, when was it all discussed? How did it come about? October 10th of last year of 18, that was the first time it was put on the agenda as a work session item. That was discussed in a public meeting of the Board of Trustees.
I have that.
Okay, so you have the meeting minutes, I believe?
I do.
Okay.
I thought maybe it started way before that.
That was the first time it was discussed in a public work session.
Okay, thank you.
Following that, November 7th of 18, that's when Resolution 18-1107C came to the board, following the 2 meetings prior to that work session, where it was a unanimous vote to overturn the prior resolution for flat headstones and allow the upright headstones. Any type of rule to notify the residents, there isn't. If this was any type of zoning change or something like that, there would be a rule. Anybody touching that property within 200 feet would be notified. However, this is just a resolution that was overturned and written into new, so there wasn't a rule that we didn't follow. However, Mr. Rossi and I discussed it because I believe you reached out to him.
I did.
In hindsight, we should have, and that was on me. There wasn't a rule in place, but yeah, we absolutely should have reached out to you, and in the discussions, I probably should have brought that up. Started by residents or a monument company or any type of company like that was never involved. It was started by residents through phone calls and where people were getting buried and things of that nature, their loved ones, to our cemetery sexton. And she had so many complaints that they wanted to be buried there, but they wanted an upright headstone. That's what generated the conversation and brought to a work session before the board. And anything that we can do for the residents, the board always has the power to overturn it. Again, there already are headstones going up, but retroactively going back and doing anything, there's not.
Well, the other thing that I read in the minutes was that Tufts was offering, I don't know if you call it rebates or an incentive for people that had flat stones to $650 off for a single and $850 off for a double. I mean, that kind of sounds like money generated by...
It is, and that was all after the fact.
So that could be just like overnight, I could wake up and have 100 headstones I'm looking at.
Right, and that was all after the fact. They did come to us and offer that.
And then did Tufts also offer something called a columbarium or something, which is a structure that's going to go in there?
They did. And
oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you. I'm serious. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Shirley Miller, 7669 Squirrel Run. Is there any way of putting a privacy screen fence so that when they're looking out their back doors, they're not looking exactly at the cemetery? There's some kind of solid barrier.
The Board of Trustees has that authority over any of our cemeteries or parks or anything like that. Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, that's something we can look at. If that's something we can look and see.
I think you had mentioned that on the phone to the possibility of some sort of screening. I was out there a couple weeks ago, and some of the houses that back up to it, there is still vegetation still left in place, and then there's a large opening. So I think that's something we can discuss.
Yeah, because this doesn't need to get into a long drawn out discussion, but when we built there in 2016, we would have just left the grub stuff. But now I don't have 25 years to wait to grow something.
Sure.
I mean, look, I only had, you can roll me out the cemetery. And I don't think I want to look, the rest of the life that I have left, I want to look at a bunch of headstones. I'd be depressed every day. That's my future, right?
Well, at the board's discretion, I can definitely put this on the work session if you'd like, as a first screening and maybe build a new section.
Yeah,
I'd like to see it if we could.
It'll be brought back at a work session item.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, and there is one more thing I got to bring up too that I forgot that they just mentioned, that we put on there was the State Route 48 expansion. I want to kind of get in a little detail because right now it's all preliminary stages of this. I had the Warren County engineers approach myself and their administrator and referencing to getting the letter to approve. What they're looking at doing is from Willow Pond Boulevard, that's just south of Nunner Road. It's actually the bottom side, Indian Lake Reserves, all the way up to Michael's Farm by Kroger's area. They are looking to widen that area to a 2-lane with turning lanes. So eventually it would turn into five lanes wide. It's preliminary stages. They are actually putting in a grant through OPWC to try to get this. So when like I said, very preliminary. So when it does happen, they're looking in 2023, correct? 2023 for this to happen. So unfortunately, it's not happening anytime soon, but it is something that we're trying to get, and the state is actually looking at it, and it actually stems off of a bigger grant and a bigger picture of what the Warren County is doing over by the off of 63 where the casino's at. That's what stemmed this off, and what they did is they actually drew us like it's almost like a circle, it almost looks like the state of Texas in a way, to where they actually included 4822 to help out with the traffic flow, because eventually the impact all the way around that would cause that. So I do want to let everybody know that is something they're looking into, but it would be, if it does happen, it would be 2023 before it does happen. But I do want to update everybody on that, and like I said, it's very preliminary. We got it approached to us 2 weeks ago, so I can kind of give you a little bit of information, but not a lot on it, because they're still trying to work it to get a grant. Okay? Thank you.
And just a follow-up question to that. We understand there's going to be on 22 and 3 across from us, reserves at Willow Pond. On the other side, they're going to be putting in a apartment building complex.
Correct.
Is there any talk of how the light's going to be? Is there going to be a different, with that many more cars coming up to the light, and then the traffic from like Foster's Bridge all the way out to 48? Is there any talk of widening that section?
So 22 and 3 and 48, like we said, that is done through the state. That is state owned. They do have a plan if you'd like to look on their website. As far as widening it, at this time I don't believe they're widening anything. They do have some turning lanes, some roundabouts they were looking at, some mini roundabout. If, like I said, I would encourage you, because the whole session of it is about, I think it was 500 something pages, so to go through all that. It would be good for you to get on there and look it over, because it actually is coming from Landon all the way out to Rochester. They're working on different plans and how they can do left turn only, right turns, add in, all of that. But at this time, they are not planning on widening either one of the two bridges. Brian, our administrator, and the trustees have been up at Washington, D.C., and that was one of the things they were kind of chewing on the state's ears up there as well, as long as the federal, to try to help out with doing something. I do know that, but at this time, I can tell you in 2005, I believe is when it was, 2012 in that area, They were actually looking to widen the viaduct on 22 and 3, but when the Jeremiah Mara Bridge on 71 went bad, all fundings went to the Jeremiah Mara Bridge, and we lost that fundings on that. So, but there are areas and things that they're looking at trying to do to upgrade, to help out with traffic control. Is it going to fix it right off the bat? No, but at least they are looking at it. They have a study, and they have a plan for it. Just like Zora Road in 22 and 3, they're actually putting a left turn there as well. So there's things that they're doing. They got a big plan, a big drawing on their state website. I would encourage you to go on there and look at it and look at the study and how everything was done on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have another question?
Yes.
Yeah, is there going to be another subdivision going in off of Honeysuckle, back behind, Honeysuckle stops dead end?
So that is actually with South Lebanon. South Lebanon annexed that. There's a proposed subdivision that's supposed to come in off of Grandin Road by Stryker, just a little bit before Stryker. And that dead end where the Honeysuckle is, I think there's plans on them going to try to tap into the Honeysuckle there. I don't know. We're going to do everything we can to kind of stop that, but you know, unfortunately, it was stubbed. It was stubbed for a subdivision, so more than likely they'll be granted that right to have that subdivision connected to it. Correct.
In that field back there,
Correct.
where they're
Yes,
thinking
sir.
about this? So Brandon, South Lebanon as well?
A certain portion of it, a short section. It's actually between Stryker Road and right before you get to Grandin Ridge. There's a short section where they came across the road to get that property. So that is South Lebanon, and down by the powder factory is South Lebanon as well. They annexed that section all the way through the bike trail, all the way out to where the monkey bar is on Old 3C. So they took out a good portion of it when they
So
did.
the roadways back in there is controlled by the state or South Lebanon?
And in the subdivision itself, it will
Well,
be
Brandon Road's going to be a
Grand. So a short section is actually going to be South Lebanon, and then the rest of the section is owned by the county. It's a county road. Correct.
And just to piggyback a little bit, Mr. Cordray had me look into the Honeysuckle connection, not to be unneighborly, but we wanted to look at all options. You know, can we deny access, and can we, you know, open it up and help? All those, it was stubbed for that, so we don't really have any options. Once that subdivision goes in, that very likely will be stubbed in. So but we have looked into it and, you know, done all of our due diligence. So I'm Brent Centers, I'm the administrator here. This look a little bigger on my computer screen, so sorry about that. We kind of cover a lot of different areas with police, fire, and EMS and public works. They're pretty specific to why you call them. Everything else you call us. And so under the administration we have finance, economic development, zoning, and human resources. We have the kind of smallest staff, but the broadest net, if you will. Under the direction of this board, that kind of went back, that's what we do. We implement what the Board of Trustees votes upon. We support the other departments through payroll, insurance, everything like that. And with that, we field the questions generally from all of the residents, whether it be a community garden or budgets, community events, parks. Usually I kick those to Kenny, but a lot of the questions start with us and usually start with Lindsay, and then she funnels them out to the appropriate department or person. Under the direction of this board, they have pushed very hard for community, to build community and transparency. And with that, they've created an advisory committee, which is, the idea behind that is to kind of have the pulse of the citizenry within 7 members of the community. And that went through an interview process, an appointment process through the Board of Trustees. And one of the first things they said, we want to bring back community events, get people together. With doing that, I don't want it to be a cost to any of the taxpayers. So that was a little challenging, but they pulled it off. And if you've been to any of the events, they were very successful. The first one was a tree lighting, and up in the top, you can see it was actually planned to be outside. We had the tree put up, everything through donations. Started raining, and the committee packed it into this room, and it was just as successful. They had the Grinch and Santa, and it was just a huge event. A lot of people, and we had Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts getting involved, a lot of volunteers from the community. Following that, they brought the Easter egg hunt back, which was an event from the past that ended up, it was stopped, and they brought it back, and we packed Testerman Park with an extremely successful Easter egg hunt. I don't know the exact count, but it was, the whole park was packed with different age groups, and Becky, was it 6,000 Easter eggs?
6,000 Easter eggs.
Stuffed in the basement of this building after hours. And it was just the commitment of the advisory committee and the board of trustees and staff just pulling together, and volunteers from the community. Over here we had a picnic in the park. This board opened Mounts Park 7 days a week, and Mounts Park had prior to that been open on the weekends. They opened it for the whole for the warmer season, but 7 days a week. And with that, they said, well, let's do a picnic in the park, just get people down there, get them fishing. We're working on some EPA issues with the big lake that's shut down, but the small lake in the front has good fishing, and we opened it up, and it was not a huge turnout, but the turnout that showed up, maybe 30 or 40 people, really had a nice Sunday afternoon and just shared some nice fellowship and food. So we enjoyed it, and we're gonna bring it back. Another one's Touch a Truck. This was put on by the Business Expo, which is partnered with the Township. This year it'll be hosted by the Township, and same location. It'll be Fellowship Baptist Church. And yesterday was the deadline for the applications, and Lindsay let me know today that we had 35 applicants. We have helicopters, a limousine, a NASCAR, all kinds of really, really neat things to bring your kids out. Last year, thousands of people went through Touch Truck, and it's a really, really neat event. Again, it pulls the community together with no cost to the taxpayers. And finally, is Trunk or Treat. It was canceled last year, and this is a topic with the advisory committee. We're going to talk about this tomorrow night, by the way. Bringing that back, making sure that happens, because it was a successful event, and it brought all the kids out, and that's what we're about. So, aside from community events and all the fun stuff, comes your finances. And this is one of the most important things to you, although maybe the most dull to hear about. Unless you're been here. Sorry, Mark. The two things we do every year, the major budgeting items, is our tax budget and capital budget. The tax budget is submitted mid-year. We're getting ready to submit it at next month. So that's where actually this past 2 weeks, the chiefs and Kenny and I have gone, along with Ellen, who's our finance coordinator, have gone line by line and every single line in each of their budgets. And it's not just a police budget and a public works budget. Here's a list of all the budgets. We have a general cemetery, motor vehicle tax, gasoline, road and bridge, permissive motor vehicle tax. There's all these different within each department, and those have to be balanced. We have to make sure we're bringing in more revenue than expense. And then they have to justify to me, so that I can justify to our board and fiscal officer every line item and every penny spent. On the other side, we have our audit. So we know that we're and then the capital budget, that's submitted by year end. And the capital budget is to show what we need for next year. These are the way this board and I budget is trends off of the last 5 years. And then we go ahead and put an honest budget together so we don't have to continue to reappropriate money. And with that, we've had a successful year thus far, and we believe we'll be finishing out the year as well. The audit, we get an auditor. We're required by law once every 5 years for the state auditor to come in and audit us. We have an auditor come in every year just voluntarily just to make sure that we're ready for that state audit. And of the past 5 years, we have just received a report last month that we had our 5th perfect audit. They had no dings. They didn't even have a written warning or anything. So trust that your staff here is doing great work. Most of it falls right onto Ellen Norman, who's your finance coordinator, and Kelly Krieger, who's your human resources. That's because they come in and do all the finance reporting, healthcare and insurance, investments, public records, meeting minutes. That's why I have to have you say your name and address. That gets audited to make sure if we were to ever get in a lawsuit about something that was voted on tonight, we can send out letters to those who were in this meeting that spoke. So everything gets audited. Timesheets and personnel, they pulled audio from just to make sure that I was at this meeting, since I had a timesheet that said I was. So they get into every detail, and for 5 years straight, we've had perfect audits. So just that speaks volumes to your staff. The roles of your trustee, fiscal officer, and administrator. This was put up there just because a lot of residents, they'll say, you know, I reached out to trustee X and they haven't gotten back to me. Like, well, that was 2 hours ago. You know, that a lot of times, just it's important to understand that they have 30,000 residents calling them about every different issue, and Mr. Walker might be able to answer something about building construction or stormwater pretty quick, but if it comes to maybe a park something or something, he might have to kick that question to me, and then I might have to send it to Kenny or something like that. So the turnaround time is a little different if you call one of your board members, because they're just fielding everybody's questions. And then 4 major departments broken into sub-departments that they have to answer for. Mr. Hunter, the fiscal officer, that role is very unique within the Ohio Revised Code. He's in charge of course, the finances. He's also in charge of public records requests. He's in charge of meeting minutes and some oddities like that within the Ohio Revised Code. So that's another part of the audit. When I go through my meeting minutes or public records request, Kelly Krieger is our public records custodian. So she receives a request, files it. If it has to get legal, it gets legal. And then when they report it, that is ultimately on Mr. Hunter as a fiscal officer, even though, because he's given us a letter of understanding that, you know, we're going to have staff do it, it still falls on him. So he has a very unique position when it comes to meeting minutes and open meeting things. And then, of course, your board, all investments go through them, all decisions go through them, any sale of property, acquisition of property, your parks, your cemeteries, everything ultimately lands on their shoulders. And we work at the direction of them and then delegate it from then on. Did I miss anything? Okay. Our org chart. So, again, our organizational chart is a little odd because we have some dotted lines to the fiscal officer. Each department broke down their departments, but under that you have, of course, the residents, and then you elect your board to include your fiscal officer. Under them, they directly hire me, and then under that will be all the department heads. Human resources is above on the hierarchy based on, there's a lot of things that will never come into my office, but the chief might go to Kelly's office because it's a personnel issue or something like that. And it might, if it makes it to me, it might not make it to the board. And so it just depends on the issue. Really, the way we work around here, you could probably put this all on a pretty flat line. We're a big team around here, and that starts from the residents helping with events to the board coming in and, you know, making it happen, giving us direction. We work as a team around here, and we wear many hats. As I said, Ellen does finances. She does all of our investments. Kelly does human resources, but she's also our cemetery sexton, our public records agent. So we all kind of wear different hats. We all share roles. Lindsay picks up all the gaps, kind of fills in everywhere. And so that's kind of how we're laid out. We have, the reason we have the dotted lines, finance coordinator on paper reports directly to me, but also Mr. Hunter can directly give a direction to Ellen on what he wants to do with the budget. So there's a dotted line. Kelly, again, that's public records and meeting minutes. That's Mr. Hunter's job. So she has a dotted line to him because she handles that, and of course me, I work for all 4 elected officials. And finally, communication. At the beginning, I kind of mentioned transparency being a direction of this board. One of the things is branding and transparency, getting that message out. The board had directed us to do a newsletter, and the advisory committee stepped up and sent out a quarterly newsletter. We're working on the second one, and that's going to be coming out next month. And July. She looked at me because I owe her an article, that's why. But it was an 8-page, really nice newsletter, 1 page for each department. That way we can make sure you guys continue to be aware of everything going on. The rebranding, we're looking at entrance signs and all this different type of rebranding. When I was first hired, we were looking at a social media policy, and one of the social media policies says it follows the brand of the township. So I started looking around and I pulled 6 different logos off a police patch, fire patch, public works truck. This podium had a seal from the 80s. Our letterhead, everything was so different. So we started a conversation about branding and narrowed it down. We're starting to look into this logo here, where we keep the kind of the heritage of the water and the rolling hills of the old patch, or the old logo, or the current logo. We're trying to put a new age spin on it. And the idea is also if you could ultimately remove any words and just have the logo, people would know that that's Hamilton Township. So we're trying to, that's the focus and the drive. We'll have that on entrance signs, park signs, patches. It's going to be a 2-year phase-in period. It's not going to, that hit our budget too much if we just said, all right, everything's new. But we'll be phasing this out over the next 2 years. And we're kind of finalizing the last details on that. And then finally, the other one is the website. We had a website, we currently have a website that's not maybe as user-friendly, and we wanted to make sure people could get quick answers if they got it, if they wanted to. They could report a problem right there online. We have community partners and calendar events that may sometimes get a little outdated, where now it'll once that event happens, it drops off, and the next one comes up and hits you on the newsfeed. So this is what our new website, which will be rolling out next month, this is what it's going to look like on the desktop. This is what it will look like on your cell phone. Our current website, the mobile app, you lost about 50%? Or about 50% of the content. When you pulled it up on your phone, you didn't get it. You had to pull it up on your desktop. So we make sure, and there's also not up here one for a tablet or an iPad. So there's 3 different versions to make sure no matter where you pull it up, you're going to get the information you need. You're going to be able to report a problem, get a hold of us. And that's, again, straight from the direction of the board on communicating with the public and keeping you guys informed and transparent. And with that, I'll take any questions. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Eileen Mears, 1117 Elk Run. We heard Kenny talk about the logos that they're putting on the street signs to identify Hamilton Township. Is that the same logo as they're talking about there? Or do you have to go back and change the street signs now to put the new logo on it?
It'll be a phase-out process over the next few years. And that's one of the things. We have street signs, we have fire trucks. There's a whole branding process that'll have to take place.
A rebranding?
Yes.
Because I heard Kenny say that we went and we already put up street signs with a logo.
That's correct.
So now I'm hearing we're going to go back and spend money changing all the street signs again?
As
with
they,
that logo on?
yes ma'am, as they deteriorate over time, they'll be replaced with the new logo. We won't go out and replace good signs. But as they deteriorate, this is part of the process. And we actually have one of the logos similar to this that we designed with the street sign background as part of the phase-out process. Are there any other questions for me? Yes, sir.
Well, on your website, you said you had community calendars on there. Can we tie our community calendar to yours?
An HOA community calendar?
Yeah.
What type? The answer is yes. What type of events?
We have some, like we have a luau, we have Sunday on Sunday, just some different.
And the whole township is invited to that? Yeah, I mean, we'll put it on there, but people will show up.
Yeah.
People in this township show up for events. We're blessed for that. Are there any other questions for me? Yes, sir.
Mark Sousa, 1470 Shawnee Run. With the gas tax going into effect,
yes, sir.
I think July, what's the process for a collection of that, and when will the township realize additional revenues from that?
So Kenny, you kicked me one. This is back to you.
So with the gas taxes, we will be receiving that in July. That is going to be about an extra 130,000 extra. That is actually going to be utilized throughout the township as helping out with the road resurfacing. Infrastructure mainly is what I'm going to be using that. And we could also use that for as an employees as well. We are, like I said, with being low staffed the way we are, we're in desperate need of more guys. We've had 6 guys here when I first started here in 2004, and we're still at 6 guys.
So the tax increase is in July, right?
Correct.
So the collection schedule, we will nearly immediately start to see
Correct.
incremental, just they'll settle monthly, or, I didn't know if it was like property taxes twice a year, what that collection schedule.
Yeah, they're estimating what it is. I don't have a hard number yet.
Right.
That's what they're estimating, but they also, from their estimation, saying we were bringing in more than what we were before previously, and it's not the case. So that's why we have to be conservative. It said 146. That's why we're saying around the 130 area, just because of our trend that we had.
And to follow up 2 things that Kenny had mentioned. One, what Kenny kind of brought to me to take the board with staffing. That would be another, at a minimum, another part-time seasonal worker devoted to Mounts Park and Testerman Park. We already have one at Testerman, but we could use kind of some split duties there. And then now as this board's pushing more events and more activity in Mounts, getting someone down there to maintain it. The other thing is, I've been asked by 2 or 3 residents, now you passed a roads levy, but then you also are getting this gas tax in. Could you give some of that road levy money back? And that's fair, because that wasn't, that tax, the gas tax, was not expected when the voters voted. So to answer that, the board can do whatever they want. However, as Kenny alluded to, we need to be paving 6 lane miles a year that's based upon a road being good for 10 to 15 years. We estimate all of our roads at 12 years just for the average, and we're still behind the 8 ball. So we have to play catch up to ultimately then get to 6 lane miles a year. So we will use that money towards getting caught up to where we can keep all these and maintain all these road resurfacings with the levy money that we got in.
Well, it's possible too, with the 48 widening, they could look to us for a contribution to that, right? And any additional revenues, I mean, thinking really long term. I know they mentioned in the presentation a couple weeks ago that if a chunk of that gets picked up through that grant, it's only about half the project, I think. And the rest will have to come locally or from the county.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. They came and presented, we signed a letter stating that we were in favor of the project. The county commissioners voted to sign a letter saying they were in favor of the project, however, didn't secure us into the project if we were to receive the funds. If we were, we would have to come up with the other money between us and the county. So that's what Mr. Seuss is alluding to, is at some point, we're going to need to be given some money into this major project, even though it is a state project. So yeah, the gas tax could very well go towards that. Are there any other questions for me? If not, I'll turn it back to the board to conclude.
All right, I guess before we wrap up this evening, gentlemen, you guys have any comments?
I'd just like to say I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. It's good to see so many different HOAs and subdivisions represented here. And if you ever need anything, like you say, our cards are in the back. Feel free to call us anytime. At least maybe not after 11. But I do appreciate you coming out tonight.
Yeah, same here. I do appreciate you coming out. We would like to see more of your faces at trustee meetings, first and third Wednesday of the month. And again, as Mr. Walker said, my card's in the back of the room as well. Feel free to grab one. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm not going to sound too much like a broken record, but pretty much the same thing. I do appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I hope you found it as beneficial as I think this board did, just to hear the questions and the feedback from you guys. I hope you've got some great information and insight, and I would definitely encourage you to not only follow each department on social media, follow the township as well. We have our own separate Facebook page where we put out information. We put things like this, and we are working towards getting that website up where we're going to have some more robust information where we should see some better connections between the township and the public. But other than that, again, reminder, if you guys have any questions, you need to reach out to any of us at any point in time, whether it's the board members here, Mr. Centers, or our township department heads. Encourage you to grab a card in the back. All right. With that, I will make a motion to adjourn at 7:49 p.m.
Mr. Cordray? Yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Rousey?
Yes.